Welcome to this edition of the Head to Head Podcast. I'm your host, Cam McKinney. This is episode number 81 of the podcast. In this edition of the podcast, I'm talking about what's next for Tom Brady and Drew Brees as they head into free agency. And I think there's a lot of things in common about where these two quarterbacks are at. They are both in their early 40s, coming off of a first-round exit. What I find most fascinating about the two is that so many people have different opinions about both of them. Most people think Drew Brees has more left in the tank than Tom Brady, and most people think Tom Brady is on the decline. But I think where people are wrong is that they're both in that same spot of you don't know what you're going to get week to week with them. The idea of the downfall of a quarterback is going to happen at a time where you don't expect it. Last year, Tom Brady was coming off a Super Bowl win, and we all expected that he was going to have years and years and years left in the tank. This year, he loses 2 games in a row to the Dolphins and the Titans, and now we're questioning everything. The exact same thing could happen to Drew Brees, and maybe it already did happen to Drew Brees, and we're not really talking about it at all. Max Kellerman got a lot of things wrong when it comes to Tom Brady, but one thing he did get right was when he talks about quarterbacks, that decline and that aging happens instantly. Peyton Manning became bad instantly. No one could have seen that coming. 2 years before, he broke the touchdown record. That's how fast this decline can come. Brett Favre, 1 year in Minnesota, he's having maybe his best season as a professional. The next, he looks old and worn out and needs to retire from football. Like, the decline for these two are going to happen sooner rather than later. And to me, they're in that exact same situation. For you to bet the house that Drew Brees has 3 or 4 more years of being a dominant quarterback, that's, to me, just as risky as saying Tom Brady has 2 or 3 more years of being a really good quarterback. But where I think most people are fooled is that they're looking at the regular season stats. Last year in the regular season, Tom Brady had 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and a 60.8 completion percentage. Drew Brees had 27 touchdowns, 4 picks, and a 74.3 completion percentage. I would argue that Drew Brees had Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara, and Tom Brady does not have that kind of weaponry. No offense to Julian Edelman. He's nowhere near as good as Michael Thomas has ever been. That's just a fact. But both are in their 40s. Drew Brees is 40. Brady is 42. Both have been coached by the same head coach for the last decade plus, Bill Belichick and Sean Payton. See, there are more things in common than people are letting on right now. They are both first and second in touchdowns all time. Drew Brees has 547. Tom Brady has 539. Both have been part of gigantic scandals with their teams. Tom Brady Deflategate, Drew Brees Bountygate. Although, again, Drew Brees wasn't entirely a part of Bountygate, but he was on the team. Both are free agents and coming off of first-round exits. Brady was abysmal the second half of the season, and Drew Brees missed 7 games. As bad as Tom Brady played against the Titans, I think Drew Brees is the one who had the worst weekend. Let's think about this. Taysom Hill comes into the game and is part of a really big drive that makes you think the Saints are coming back. They look excited. They look exuberant. They look like they're the team that's supposed to be. Then Drew Brees comes in, and what does he do? Fumbles the ball. That was the moment where I started thinking about where are the Saints with Drew Brees right now. For me, the real problem with Tom Brady this year was not his lack of weapons. It was his lackluster decision-making. We all thought Tom Brady wasn't physically where he used to be, but we all thought mentally he had mastered the game. I mean, TB12 was telling us for years that Tom Brady was the master of football, that it was his mind that was his greatest weapon. Well, his mind this year was pretty bad, if you ask me. So many bad throws, so many missed opportunities to score. Mentally, Tom Brady wasn't there this year, which to me is why I have so many more questions about Tom Brady than I would if he was physically deteriorating, because it was his mental game this year that was lapsing. Still don't believe me that Tom Brady and Drew Brees are in the same boat? Here are their playoff stats. Brady and Brees combined for 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions in the playoffs this year. The Pats scored 13, Brady threw for 209 yards. And the Saints scored 20, and Brees threw for 209 yards. They both had not great games against 2 teams that nobody thinks are Super Bowl contenders, the Titans and the Vikings. Both Tom Brady and Drew Brees lost to these 2 names, Kirk Cousins and Ryan Tannehill. 2 people we do not associate in the same category as these 2 all-time greats. Nobody could have imagined to start the season that Tom Brady would lose to the likes of Ryan Tannehill, and the same can be said for Drew Brees. They are losing to talents we do not think are the same as theirs. So while the regular season stats tell you that Drew Brees has more left in the tank, I would argue maybe he benefited from only playing in 11 games. Brady played in all 16. Maybe he's benefiting from Michael Thomas because at the end of the day, they ended their seasons in the exact same place, and I have the same exact questions about both of them. I have heard some people say that the Patriots should go after Drew Brees as Tom Brady leaves because Drew Brees has more left in the tank. First off, we all know that's never going to happen. Drew Brees isn't going to leave the Saints and join the Patriots. And second of all, I don't think that's a major change. That's another aging quarterback for an aging quarterback. They are in the exact same situation. If you look at the stats, it doesn't look like they are, but if you look at how that season ended for both of them, they both had lackluster performances in big-time games and ended their season at the same place, eliminated in the first round. Here's my biggest question mark for the Patriots. The question for the Pats is, do you bring back Brady if the situation remains the same? And for me, the answer is no. You need to improve the running game, get him a tight end or 2, and you can only bring him back on short-term deal. 2 years max. It's hard to walk away from a guy with 6 Super Bowl titles. But if you're going to tell me the situation is going to remain the same, and the roster is for the most part offensively going to remain the same, I see no point in bringing back Tom Brady because he cannot win a Super Bowl with what he has now. You need to load up on offense or walk away from the greatest quarterback of all time because I'm not going through that misery again. If you end up losing Josh McDaniels, if you end up losing that offensive coordinator, again, that's another question of do you even want Tom Brady back if you're going to have a new offensive coordinator? And if you're going to rely on the younger players, Jacoby Myers and N'Keal Harry, then I don't see Brady being the right guy for this team right now. But if you tell me you bring in Tyler Eifert or another tight end, you bring in more running backs, again, bring in 2 tight ends, have a really good offense, bring a star wide receiver to the Patriots like you try to do with Antonio Brown, and try to go on a victory lap tour to get that 7th and final Super Bowl, I'm all in for that. But if you're telling me that the same guys, the same names are on this team next year, I do not think the outcome is going to be any different than it was this season. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that there's more of a chance for the Saints to bring back Brees than the Patriots to bring back Brady. But my biggest question for the Saints is this. If you can win the same amount of games with Teddy Bridgewater and Taysom Hill, then why are you bringing back Drew Brees? I'll give Brees 1 more year, and if they don't have playoff success, things need to change. I think that's fair. Because although Drew Brees has won a Super Bowl, it doesn't look like he's the best player on the Saints anymore. Michael Thomas is ahead of him. Alvin Kamara should be ahead of him, but he had a down year. Like, Drew Brees is no longer the man on the New Orleans Saints on the offensive side. Like, I would say last year, the Patriots needed Tom Brady to be great more than the Saints needed Drew Brees to be great. The Saints needed Alvin Kamara to be great. Like, if Alvin Kamara had a stellar season, I think the Saints would be in the second round of the playoffs. The only way the Patriots were ever going to have success last season is if Tom Brady brought it. Because Tom Brady did not have Taysom Hill, and he did not have Teddy Bridgewater as his backups. The Saints are in that similar situation the Patriots were in a few years ago when the Patriots had Jimmy Garoppolo and Jacoby Brissett, and they kept Tom Brady. And that decision was made right because guess what they did? They won another Super Bowl. But guess what? Where we are with the Saints is you have to ask yourself, are we in that same situation with Drew Brees? If we keep Drew Brees, will we get another Super Bowl? If the answer to me is no, you have to seriously thinking about naming Taysom Hill or Teddy Bridgewater or a combination of the two the next quarterbacks of the New Orleans Saints and move on from Drew Brees. Because let's face it, the Patriots in a way did lose on from Jimmy Garoppolo and Jacoby Brissett, but they were rewarded with another Super Bowl title with Tom Brady. They made the bet, they bet on Brady, and they were right. If you make that same bet on Brees and you're wrong, and you lose out on Teddy Bridgewater and Taysom Hill, I think you're going to seriously regret that moving forward as an organization. Because I think there's no doubt in my mind, Teddy Bridgewater could start for the Saints if you give him Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, win 10 to 12 games, and maybe get out of the first or second round of the playoffs, and you could seriously compete if you bolster your defense. Like, there are ways that the Saints could be really good next season. There are fewer ways in my mind that the Patriots could be really good next season. Like, I don't see any way Jared Stidham comes in for the Patriots and has a stellar season in his first go around with the Patriots. Like, for me, I would want the Patriots to seriously go for it at quarterback. The name that came up on the show Get Up on ESPN, I think the name is Matthew Stafford. If the Patriots could get a guy like Matthew Stafford, maybe be the bridge, stay there for 5 years, then you could seriously think about who the next guy is after that. To me, the Patriots would improve over next season. That would be a real reason to move on from Brady. But if you're moving on from Brady and moving to Jared Stidham, you're not trying to win, you're trying to rebuild, which maybe is the place the Patriots should be going. But I think the question you have to ask yourself there is Bill Belichick the right guy for a rebuild? His first-round draft picks in the recent memory haven't been great. They've been injury-prone. Isaiah Wynns of the world, Sony Michel's of the world. Sony Michel had one of the most disappointing seasons in the NFL. Like, if Sony Michel were really good this year, like I thought he was going to be, I think the Patriots would be in the second round. Similar to what Drew Brees went with Alvin Kamara. Like, their star, or they're supposed to be star running backs, did not perform up to par. Like, Sony Michel looked great in the postseason. I thought we'd be talking about Sony Michel as a top 10 running back in the NFL. They did not show up. These season failures of Drew Brees and Tom Brady's are not all their fault. But the issue of them both being in their 40s is that they can no longer elevate the flaws of their teams. Like, there were so many years in a row where the Patriots didn't look talent-wise as great as everyone else. But then you knew because you had Tom Brady, you would finish 13-3. It would be like when the Spurs had Tim Duncan. You had that guy. Because you had that guy, you were going to be great. Because you had Tom Brady, you were going to be great. The Saints, they had that down spiral. You thought the Saints were going away, that the Sean Payton, Drew Brees thing was over after Bountygate or whatever. Then they came back, and because of Drew Brees and because of Sean Payton, they elevated their team that you thought wasn't as good as it was, and they've had some of the best home field advantage in the sport. I mean, these guys used to elevate their teammates and their teams to places they could never imagine. Now they need teams to bolster them, to elevate them. And the question is, do you want to pay them to be on your team? Drew Brees made $25 million last year with the Saints. That's not worth it for a first-round playoff exit. Tom Brady didn't make nearly as much, but just them having them around, it's like, where are we going with this? Like, if you have Tom Brady and you're used to being Super Bowl contenders, I just don't see you having him around if you're not going to go for it. Like, if the Patriots are going to keep him around, they have to go for it. I think I agree with most people that Drew Brees probably does have more left in the tank when it comes to the regular season. But when it comes to the postseason, I obviously, and everyone should, have more faith that Tom Brady can still win another Super Bowl. He has 6. Drew Brees has 1 Super Bowl title. So when it comes to winning, I'm sorry, I'm going to go with Tom Brady. It's just so nuts to me that so many people are favoring Drew Brees in his circumstance. His season literally ended with him fumbling the ball in the most meaningful moment. Although Tom Brady did not step it up against Miami, he did not step it up against the Tennessee Titans. So many excuses were made for Tom Brady this year, his lack of weapons. Some of it was his fault. His decision-making was abysmal. But at the end of the day, there's no doubt in my mind, if you give him the right team, if he's in the right mindset, if he's healthy, maybe his elbow is better, Tom Brady can still still win a Super Bowl? I don't know the answer to, can Drew Brees still win a Super Bowl? Because these last 3 years where they've had 3 heartbreaking losses, Drew Brees has not played great. He has not played clutch. Whereas though Tom Brady is the greatest and the most clutch quarterback of all time, I just think Tom Brady still has moments where he can elevate in the moment. Like, I don't think Tom Brady can elevate you to being 13-3 and throwing 50 touchdowns anymore. But there are still moments of clutch that you just know that you have faith that Tom Brady can win the game. And I know this year maybe questions all of that. Does he have that? I don't know the answer to that, but I'd be willing to bet more on him having that moment than Drew Brees having that moment. I can bring up the stats and I can bring up the playoffs all I want, but the hardest thing about if these teams move on from these two players is they are no doubt about it the best players in franchise history. The Patriots were not the Patriots before Tom Brady. The Saints were not the Saints without Drew Brees. They were not relevant. Drew Brees is the biggest name in New Orleans Saints history, and Tom Brady is the Patriots. It's almost impossible to move on from these two players. But at the end of the day, it has to be about winning. Like, the Patriots are about winning. The Saints, maybe less so. Like, I'm not saying they don't care about winning Super Bowls, but I think it would be more about, let's have Drew Brees come back and play out his years and just end his career with the Saints. I don't think the Patriots will be as emotionally tolerant of Tom Brady's return the same way that the Saints would be if Drew Brees is returned. Like, I think the Saints as an organization revere Drew Brees more so than maybe the Patriots do with Tom Brady. Like, I think Bill Belichick sees that there's life after Brady. I don't think Sean Payton sees life without Drew Brees right now. Like, there is no doubt in my mind Sean Payton and Drew Brees have a better relationship right now than Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, which seems nuts. They have 6 Super Bowls, yet I still think there's this ego thing of like, can I win without you or can I win without him? I think both of them maybe want to prove that they can win without the other. Sean Payton and Drew Brees have 1 Super Bowl. I don't think there's any question about their relationship. I think they've seem to be really tight between both of them. I don't think Sean Payton blames Drew Brees for that fumble the way that maybe Bill Belichick would. Could you imagine if the Patriots season had ended with a Tom Brady fumble? I think that would be the finite ending that Bill Belichick would need to move on from Tom Brady. Let me put it to you this way. I think if Bill Belichick had Teddy Bridgewater and Taysom Hill, Tom Brady would be out the door. I wouldn't even question it. But because it's Jarrett Stidham and not those two guys, there's a real legit chance for Tom Brady's return. But I believe if the situations were reversed, the Patriots would move on from Brady if they had Taysom Hill and they had Teddy Bridgewater. If Bill Belichick had a clear avenue to go, like if Bill Belichick had Jimmy Garoppolo now or Jacoby Brissett now, he would move on from 42-year-old Tom Brady. And I don't think anyone could really argue that point. I think the Saints would resist moving on from Drew Brees more so than the Patriots moving on from Tom Brady. And vice versa. Like, I think Tom Brady would be more willing to move on from the Patriots than Drew Brees moving on from the Saints. Tom Brady was clearly frustrated at his lack of weapons and young talent. He did not want to throw the ball to Jacoby Myers or N'Keal Harry. He wanted more weapons. His offensive line was not really good last season. Like, I think Drew Brees had a really good offensive line, a really good weapon in Michael Thomas. Why would Drew Brees want to leave the Saints? He was in the perfect situation for an aging quarterback. I think by most people's measurements, maybe Tom Brady is not in the best place for a 42-year-old quarterback to be right now, where his number one weapon is Julian Edelman, an aging slot receiver who has to take a beating week in and week out. And by the time the postseason comes, Julian Edelman was definitely worn out. I guess my final point is this. If I were both teams, I would bring back both of these quarterbacks on 1 or 2 year deals, but make no doubt about it. There is no difference between the situations. Don't be shocked if Drew Brees at 41 does not work the same way Tom Brady did at 41. Their situations are similar, but they are also different. Maybe Tom Brady just lasted longer than Drew Brees will. Like this idea that because Tom Brady was great until 42, that guess what? Drew Brees is going to be great until he's 42. No, the decline will happen when you least expect it, and they will not all decline at the exact same time. Drew Brees at times might have looked better than Tom Brady, especially in that regular season. Like Drew Brees, right when he came back from that injury, was riding high. But make no mistake about it, they ended their season at the exact same point, struggling against two teams they probably shouldn't have struggled against, the Vikings and the Titans. They are at that exact same point in their career. I just find it so silly, like we're talking about both of them like they're in two different areas. Like Drew Brees still has a lot left in the tank and Tom Brady doesn't. I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. Tom Brady has something left. Drew Brees might have a little something left too, but they are in that exact same spot. They don't have that long to go. They have maybe 1 or 2 more years of being impact football players. Make no mistake, Drew Brees and Tom Brady are two of the best quarterbacks ever, but time for them is running out. Thanks for listening to this edition of the Head Dead Podcast. I'm Cam McKinney. There'll be a new episode of the podcast every Monday on Apple Podcasts and iTunes, so please rate, review, and subscribe.